Gary Show.
Ronn Owens, KGO Radio. The great Kevin Nealon is in the studio. I played that because you wrote this beautiful piece in Variety.
Oh, thank you.
And it was really well done, and the influence that Gary had on you was astronomical, apparently.
Oh, it was phenomenal. Yeah, he was a great friend, and it was such a loss when he died last year.
The Larry Sanders Show just used to make me crack up, where it would just have hosts, the little
yeah.
thing. I mean, he was so... It was observational comedy, but it wasn't the normal observational. It was like a little bit skewed. And it's like
skewed.
If there's a highway, he was doing like the bypass, the by road.
Yeah, exactly. And he was such an influence on me and such a mentor. And we used to write a lot together and hang out and hike and play basketball. And there's not a day that goes by I don't think about him.
Was an amazing guy.
So good, so good.
Now, so I know Kevin's coming on, so I look up some things and I go on web. And I saw the first bit you did on Saturday Night Live. That was absolutely hysterical. Dennis Miller introduced you.
Thank you.
And you were talking, what was it? I'm rambling through, this is the point I'm trying to make, and you couldn't do. That was hysterical.
That was a fun bit. That wasn't the first thing I did. The first sketch I ever did on that show was called Mr. Subliminal.
Oh.
Yeah, and I remember 5 seconds before I went on, they're in a commercial. They're coming back from a break, and it's a tough sketch to do because there's like two conversations at once going on. And I'm thinking, I'm trying to remember my lines, and Lauren puts his hand on my shoulder. Lauren Michaels, the producer. And just before we come back, he goes, "Are you sure this is what you want?"
And what if you said no?
Yeah. And so I had a lot on my mind when I went out there, but it would turn out to be a great run for me. I did 9 seasons on that show.
9 seasons?
Yeah.
That's almost a record, isn't
it?
Yeah.
Well, it was a record at one point, but then people have stayed there a lot longer since then.
Is the show as much fun as it seems to be?
It's a lot of fun. It's probably one of the most fun shows I've ever done, and exciting, too. That energy in that Studio 8H when that show starts, it's just staggering.
Now, I heard about the after parties and the after parties.
Well, let me tell you something about the after parties.
Please do.
Maybe in the original years they were great and fun, but by the time you're done with the show, you've had a long week of work, and then the show's over. All you want to do is go home and go to bed. At least I did. But you always had friends in the studio that were watching the show, and they wanted to go to the after party, so you had to go. And we each got our own limo to take us there. So it was kind of an event, and we go to a different restaurant each week so people wouldn't find out where it was. But, you sat at your own table and your friends sat with you and they just gawked at the celebrities for the whole night. And then they brought you a check and you paid for the check. And then you're home at like 4 a.m. and you're tired all day Sunday. And the next thing you know, you're back at work on Monday.
Well, from what I understand, though, that's exactly the way it is now. I mean, Colin wants to just go home and go to bed with Scarlett.
Yeah. Yeah.
They really...
Scarlett Johansson?
Yeah, they're an item, apparently.
Are they really?
Really.
No.
I swear. Not making that up.
Well,
she was on the show, and what's his, Colin, the
Colin
guy...
Quinn?
Yeah, the guy
was a while ago.
The one who does Weekend Update.
Oh, Colin Just.
Colin Just.
Joust.
And they were making out, and then they've been an item ever since.
Wow. Wonder if I could get back on that show. People ask me, they say, how did you get on Saturday Night Live? Although they phrase it more like this: how did you get on Saturday Night Live?
It says something about English and the way you just accentuate a word.
Inflection.
And the like. Now, you're here doing stand-up. You're going to be at Cobb's.
That's right. Cobb's 2 shows tonight and 2 shows tomorrow night, Saturday, and 1 on Sunday.
Describe your stand-up.
Oh, it's so funny. It is so funny.
That doesn't mean anything. Tell me the kind.
You want me to analyze it?
Yeah, I come in, and what am I going to hear? What's the first thing?
Well, what happened, it's hard for me to describe. It's like describing a color for me. But my friends have told me that my comedy, my style sneaks up on you. It's very kind of,
so you got to think for a second, and then all of a sudden you burst out laughing.
Sometimes. It's very conversational. It's non-threatening. I'm not one of those in-your-face comics. But people seem to like it, I'm telling you, man. Sometimes I'm standing up there, and I'm talking, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I am funny. It's funny.
I have done this gig this is my 41st year, and it's a piece of cake. And once for a charity, I think it was a homeless charity, we all had to do 5 minutes of comedy. And I did my first time I ever did comedy, 5 minutes. Probably the roughest thing I ever did in my life.
Is that right?
I was horrible.
Yeah.
The first joke killed, and then the second one laid flat, and I didn't know what to do when it lays flat.
Well, isn't that funny? I think what musicians do is very difficult. I think what you do is difficult. I mean, to be a talk radio guy, to be in a room alone and just talk for a long time, for me, is really difficult.
But you don't see the faces of people who don't like it.
Yeah, but still, that people are listening, and every word has got to hold some kind of merit and some kind of importance, or some leading to something. I would just be rambling. I'd be talking about the time and the weather, and
we go back
traffic.
To that rambling news update. That was so funny. I got to see it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
genuinely.
What you're referring to is a bit I would do where because I had been told that a lot of comics have nothing to say, and some comics have something to say, but they don't know how to say it.
So you had to stick to your original plan.
Yeah, I stuck to the plan. That's what I'm really trying to say, I would say. I think, we should have more bridges in this town. That's what I'm really trying to say. Forget what I was saying before. I didn't know what I was talking about then. This is what I'm saying. We should have more bridges in town. That's what I'm really trying to say.
Oh, very, very funny. In terms of doing stand-up, so many people do stand-up now. It's like every city's got comedy clubs. When did this all start? Because when you were starting on Saturday Night Live, I remember the Punchline. That's all I remember.
Punchline. I used to come up to San Francisco a lot in the early 80s. There was
Right.
the Holy City Zoo. There was the other cafe, the Punchline, Cobb's, which was in the marina at the time. But so it's gone through a transition. But when I got into stand-up comedy, it was in the late 70s, early 80s. It was just kind of taking off as a occupation that wasn't such a novelty. I mean, it became not a novelty, as time went on. They had shows like Evening at the Improv, and it became more accessible to people. A lot of people never been to a comedy club before, including me. And now, today, it's like it's probably an occupation day at school, career day. It's probably one of the occupations that they offer.
Is it like the NFL? I mean, your chance of really succeeding as a comic is maybe 1 in 500 or something.
Pretty much, and all the comics are thugs, too. Yeah, so it's a lot like the NFL.
Pretty much so.
Yeah,
And the jewelry, the whole bit.
yeah.
Never stops.
The bling.
No, it's everybody's got these different acts now. I'm trying to remember. Netflix has.
There's a lot of good
six new
comics out there, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of bad comics. And you talk about Netflix. The other day, I was just getting on Netflix to watch, a movie or something, and I noticed that there's like every comic. They're not really specials anymore. They're not so special because they're so they're always there's so many of them.
Well, they had it was like the stand-ups, and it was 6 different people.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of any of them.
Right.
And one of them stood out to me. This guy Dion Cole, and I talked to Brian Copeland, who's a comedian and a good friend, and does his own talk show. And he says he's never heard of him either. Nobody heard of him.
Right.
So I mean, it.
But I'm saying there are a lot of good comics out there who've been working on their craft, and you don't know who they are, but maybe you will one day. But there are so many comics now, and when I started, there wasn't all the social media, and there weren't all these platforms like Netflix and things to be seen. But now there is that. So in a way that helps comics, but in another way, there's so many comics that it's kind of flooded. You really have to be different and unique to stand out.
Here's a fun way to ask this question. You look in great shape. Do you hike?
I do hike. It's one of my passions right now. I just kind of discovered this canyon near my house in Los Angeles, and I've been hiking there almost every day. It's like a 2-hour hike, and I invited my friend Matthew Modine. He's an actor, from Full Metal Jacket, to hike with me, and he said sure. And I had my cell phone. I said, I thought of a funny bit. I thought I should interview him as we're hiking, but as we get higher and higher up the hill, we're more out of breath, and you can't really understand the questions or the answers. So I did that with him, and I thought I should do these like once a week with a different celebrity friend. So I've been doing them. It's called Hiking with Kevin. It's on my Twitter site, @Kevin_Nealon, and it's also on my Instagram @Kevin Nealon.
Did he really turn down Wall Street?
He turned down all those movies. Back to the Future.
Back to the
Wall
Future.
Street,
He really turned
Top
them down.
Gun. Yeah.
Unreal.
Hi, it's Kevin Nealon. Welcome to my new chat show called Hiking with Kevin. My first guest today is going to be Matthew Modine. You know him from Full Metal Jacket. You know him more recently from Stranger Things. Any movies you turned down that you regret?
Back to the Future.
You turned down Back to the Future?
Yes.
You idiot. I never turned down any roles.
Never?
Everything I've been offered, I've taken.
Yeah, it's kind of like comedians
my
riding
first
in cars, but it's getting coffee with it. But it's a little more human. No, we got your mic on.
Yeah.
You heard better that way. Go ahead.
It's a talk show format that's not behind a desk, is what it is.
Yeah.
So, and it's
Or
not,
a wheel.
It's not somebody sitting down like they do in comedians in cars getting
I just
coffee.
admire the hiking part.
The hiking is good because you see some scenery. If you're not interested in the conversation, you go, oh, look at that pine tree.
If I hiked, I'd be more like your friend Gary was.
Yeah.
One house to the next house.
That's
That'd
right.
Be my hike.
Yeah, Gary Shandling, he would say he was going on a hike, and he invited me every week. And I finally said, okay, I'll go. And I realized that his hikes were going from open house to open house in the canyon.
Kevin Nealon is in the studio. 808-0810, by the way. If you want to jump in and say hi real quickly, that's fine. But the main thing is he's here at Cobb's Comedy Club this weekend, Friday,
That's right.
Saturday,
Yeah,
Sunday.
2 shows tonight, 2 tomorrow, and 1 on Sunday.
By the time you get to Sunday, are you tired or are you just...
Not really,
is that
'cause-
the most energetic one?
They're all energetic, but what I like about doing a string of gigs like this is I work on new material. And by Sunday, I've kind of honed it down, and I've gotten a lot of stuff from the previous 4 shows. and I'm able to kind of like see what I have and polish it more.
And do you change your material all the time?
I try to
the next
change
city
it.
you go to is going to be different.
Well, so a lot of it will be different, but some of it will be the same, because I'm working on new stuff. But I'm constantly trying to update my act because I've done 2 specials already for Showtime. And like I said, they're not specials anymore because everybody's doing specials. and they're on Netflix. One was called Whelmed, but not overly. And the other one was called What About Me? ?
Well, we'll continue with an ego. 8080810. What about me? I should be doing that one, don't you think? What about me? Anyway, you are just one of the nicest guys. I remember that from the last time.
I am very
we
nice.
talked. You are
That is
very
true.
nice.
Yeah,
I don't
that
know
is
how you
true.
keep up this act, but it's really well done. Ronn Owens, KGO.